Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Judgment Day for Christianity, Faith vs. Logic by the Stallion 76.
Christians do not fall into the bracket of logic. Theists do not fall in the lines of logic.
Oh, and you do. I'm sure that saying that everything came to exist out of nothing, by nothing, and from nothing is perfectly logical. That the universe, in its vastness and its great wonder and beauty, just all happened to come out of nothing, by nothing, and from nothing. And that's very logical. You know what? Even believing in magic has more logic than what you're trying to teach us. Because at least with magic, you have the magician and the bunny and the hat to thereby produce the rabbit. You're saying out of nothing everything came to exist, which simply does not make any sense if you want to go by logic. Secondly, the counter to this, even though it goes against the most modern scientific discoveries of the Hubble Space Telescope, you want to say that the universe is eternal. Ah, yes, that's our way we can get around God. The universe eternally existed. Let's throw away our scientific discoveries and come out with another wacky harebrained theory so that we can throw off the belief in God. Alright, let us say the universe is eternal. If something is eternal in the past, how does it suddenly change without a cause outside causing it to change? If a pond is frozen for eternity, how does it unfreeze itself if those were the conditions it was set in and stayed that way for eternity? Moreover, mathematicians agree that there is no such thing as an eternal past or an eternal number, because how do you subtract eternity from eternity? You come to self-contradiction and just flawed logic. Oh, but you're very logical, Mr. Atheist. Please, tell us more.
There are some Christians who understand, I guess, that it's a faith-based religion. Many don't, though. And I will give you an example of something that proves without a doubt that they do not understand the word logic. And even if they did, I don't even know if they would understand what it entails. If you were to take a man who decides to walk down the street and murder several women as well as children and people, simply because he says God ordered him to, instructed him to, due to the fact that in his mind the voice has convinced him that people around him are sinners and they are doing wrong. So he has to be an instrument of God to bring death and destruction and plague down on entire cities, such as St. Louis, Los Angeles, New York. And this man successfully murders more people than you can throw a rock at. The man ends up in prison. He's sitting in a cell. He's awaiting execution, death row, because he's been sentenced. He writes a book. He says that God told him to do all that shit that he did. Do you think Christians will believe it? Believe it or not, there's a few that would. A lot of them, though, however, would say no. God would never tell people to go kill and destroy or walk through cities and murder and rape and destroy. That is not something God would tell someone to do. But then you'll open up their Bible and you will show them passage after passage all the way through the fucking book. And then all of a sudden, after you've went 90% through the Bible,
No. Here's where you lie. 90% of the Bible isn't God judging and destroying and killing various groups of people. It happened in a few of the Old Testament books, and there was a reason behind that. And we have given you the reason time after time. which is why I find it hard that you cannot understand the logic between the answers we give and the reason why we believe it. One is, he made a covenant with Abraham that through his descendants he would bless all the nations and make them more numerous than the sands are that cover the beaches, or the sands that cover the earth. Now, you failed to understand that covenant, that he had to grind whatever grit was necessary through the mill to keep to his promise, even though he warned that grit not to get in the way of these people, yet they still decided to sell them into slavery and treat them like garbage. Okay? Then he made a promise to Moses that he would bring his people into the promised land, but the other groups of people had conquered the promised land and taken them over. And so therefore, he warned them and warned them and warned them that what they were doing was wrong, which was baby sacrifices, body mutilations, bestiality, rape, and murder. And so God used the Israelite people to judge them and conquer that land that he promised them anyways, and told those people not to be there. Showing and proving to the world a few things. Let's go through them. One is that God will stay true to his promise for his people no matter what happens, no matter what he has to do. 2, the Jewish people and the Christians throughout the ages stayed so true to their book that even up until today, we keep these stories in there. 3, this is not a command for every Christian or Christians at all to follow. After Jesus Christ came, he gave specific instructions to love your enemy. That rule was for the Jewish people, an eye for an eye. They took them into slavery, so they judged them back. Now we follow Jesus Christ. And so somebody getting a command from God to go and do that does seem unlike God's nature, because how he deals with mankind, how God's nature is and how God is, does not change. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. But how he deals with mankind changes, because mankind has developed, and we have changed, and we have progressed, and we don't do body mutilations, baby sacrifice, incest, murder, and rape. And if there was a culture that did that, I would see no problem in God using a group of people to destroy them. After all, we destroy people for killing others and for raping others. Cultures where these things are acceptable, we are trying to transform them and change their way of thinking into a rational, logical, and faithful way of living with one another. Whoops. Just dropped my headset. There we go. Okay, let's continue on with Mr. Atheist the Genius.
Got to the point where it says, new. Just the words new, aren't it? All of a sudden the Christian says, that's the way God used to be. He doesn't send murderers and killers and rapists out to do his work anymore. That's the way he used to be. All of a sudden, all the rules of logic and understanding are right out the fucking window. They will then say, because Jesus came. Because Jesus came, instructed by God.
Okay, stay tuned for part 3. Here we go.